As we all know, the civil rights movement during the 50s and 60s had a huge impact on the world, but more importantly, it had an impact on black Americans. The Civil War had just come to an end, but the war was just getting started for black people in America. The 50s and 60s turned into a time where barriers were broken and societal norms towards black people were no longer normal nor accepted. We know how it changed the unfortunate way things were back then, such as segregated schools, buses, restaurants, and even water fountains. That was just a small portion of the issues that black Americans faced during their daily lives in America. The question is, how does the 50s and 60s civil rights movement affect black people still to this day? Let's begin with a quick recap of events that took place in the 50s and 60s, starting with the Brown versus Board of Education. On May 17, 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, also known as the Brown versus the Board of Education case. The argument was that segregation of public schools went against the 14th Amendment, making it unconstitutional. Some of the main points in this appeal was segregation of children in public schools solely on the basis of race deprives children of the minority group of educational opportunities, even though the physical and other tangible factors may be equal. And the separate but equal doctrine adopted in the Plessy versus Ferguson case has no place in the field of public education. The separate but equal doctrine allowed for Jim Crow laws that kept blacks and whites from not sharing anything in public to spread and conquer in the South. Mr. Chief Justice Warren delivers his speech.
We cannot turn the clock back to 1868 when the 14th Amendment was adopted, or even to 1896 when Plessy versus Ferguson was written. Today, education is perhaps the most important function of state and local governments. In these days, it is doubtful that any child may reasonably be expected to succeed in life if he is denied the opportunity of an education. Such an opportunity, where the state has undertaken to provide it, is a right which must be made available to all on equal terms. The segregation of children in public schools solely on the basis of race deprive the children of the minority group of educational opportunities? We believe it does.
Integration was now allowed in schools. Next, the Montgomery bus boycott of 1955. The primary goal of this bus boycott was to bring an end to all types of segregation, not only on the buses. The boycott began December 5, 1955, and it lasted to 1956. Black Americans were demanding to have the same transportation rights as white people. It was a time of empowerment among black people because it showed the power of everyone working collectively to achieve a goal. The protests were also nonviolent and they gained social and political rights. At the end of it all, it was seen as a major step towards civil rights and social equality.
And the police are there not to, in our community, not to promote our welfare or for our security and our safety, but they're there to contain us, to brutalize us and murder us.
Next, the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party was founded by Hugh Newton and Bobby Seale in 1966. It was formed as a party of self-defense against the government. The Black Panther Party took a more aggressive approach towards justice, the complete opposite from the movements like the Montgomery bus boycott. The party was formed as a response to the constant police brutality that black people in America suffered from. They lived by an ideology called the 10-point program, and it called for basic rights such as employment, access to housing, education, and an end to police brutality. Along with that, it demanded that black people be released from jails and prisons. They also served the black community with programs for children and food banks. They also taught self-defense. The Black Panther Party was very conflicting with law enforcement. Let's transition into the effects these events still have on black people today. Believe it or not, a lot of black Americans don't even see integration in the schools as a big deal. There's this belief that there's something extremely powerful about a community of black people in a setting where they are all uplifting each other. That's the reason why there's HBCUs, because a lot of black people would rather be in an environment with people like them while still getting a good education. Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum did research, and she found that the opportunity for same-race peer relationships, the opportunity to gain new information about African American heritage and accomplishments, the availability of role models, and the encouragement of significant adults is a very important component in an African American child's success. With integration in schools, African American children begin to lack that. Even when you speak to older people who live to witness the integration of schools and how things change, some of them will tell you they believe that that's when the value of the black community started to decrease. Before integration, black people were running the schools. Once they integrated, that was over. Do you think the civil rights movement changed the lives of black people in America?
Well, it changed our life would be for the best. But the way I see things now, we're still not where we should be at. Because back in the days, it was time that we couldn't do certain things. I remember when I was coming up, you had different bathrooms. You had the white bathroom, you had the black bathroom, you had the black water fountain, the white water fountain. I remember in 1958 when we went to Georgia, my stepdad took us to Georgia on a trip, and we stopped in this gas station, and there was a white guy sitting outside, had a big sign over his head, "Do not serve niggas." So we came a long way, but we're still not where we should be. So it seems like things are going backwards.
Black people your age think that black people were kind of better before things got integrated, because that's when black people were more so bosses and things like that. Do you agree with that? Do you think that it was a little bit better in a way?
Yeah, I think it was better in a way because, even in the school system, back before integrations, we had more control of our children. But the children, they had more control of us, so we all the kids. Back in those days, we had prayer in school, we did the pledge of allegiance to the flag, and then if we needed to be chastised, our teachers, they had the authority to chastise us. And I think we hurt ourselves when we integrated. So, I think it's better off where we're at. We was in our own schools.
Integration into schools was still a good thing. When black children started attending schools alongside white people, 15% more black people graduated high school. Along with that, it decreased the chance of black students living in poverty when they became an adult. Research from the NCDS shows that integrated schools have a higher performance in core subjects. There's non-academic benefits as well, such as decreased levels of racial and ethnic prejudice, and a break in stereotypes and fears about the other race and ethnic group.
Going to a school with children of other races is super beneficial for me because it helps me grow and learn in a lot of different ways. And when I'm exposed to different cultures and different backgrounds, I get to see the world in a lot of different perspectives. And over time, I think I've learned to appreciate and respect the differences, which I think has made me more compassionate and more understanding. And plus, when I interact with people from different races, I gain valuable insights and I just build a lot of new connections. And embracing diversity in school, it's not only beneficial for my personal growth, but also for just creating an overall more inclusive society.
Ultimately, the goal of the Montgomery bus boycott has paid off. There's no longer any segregated public spaces and transportation. Black people learned from the bus boycott that if they work collectively, they can achieve a goal. For example, Juneteenth became a federal holiday after decades of continuously fighting for it to be. There was lots of advocacy from black individuals and groups. Opal Lee, also known as the grandmother of Juneteenth, led a walking campaign in Washington, D.C. to raise awareness about making Juneteenth an official holiday. Groups such as the NAACP and the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation also supported the fights. Then, through the Black Lives Matter movement, the fight spread and gained more public support. Texas Representative Sheila Jackson Lee and Senator Edward Markey presented a bill named the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act. In 2021, Joe Biden signed the act and Juneteenth became a federal holiday. The Black Panther Party still affects black people today, and the most recent case where the impact was shown was during the huge Black Lives Matter movement. The Black Lives Matter movement became really dominant after George Floyd was murdered by a police officer. At the time, they did exactly what the Black Panther Party used to do, but in a modern way. As the police brutality increased, there was more involvement in violent protests occurring all over the world. People were fighting back against the police, so when police were coming to protests to try and stop it from getting out of control, they just made things worse, because the members of the Black Lives Matter movement weren't afraid to fight back. That is exactly how the original Black Panther Party was. They fought against the police, Black people are generally more involved in politics than they were before, doing things such as simply voting and advocating for themselves as well. The Black Panther Party broke the barrier of fear that Black Americans had to speak up and defend themselves.